Hello and welcome everyone to our event on emotional intelligence and sports. I guess that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm very excited. Our host, our guest today, I'm the host. Our guest today is Sarah Kivel, and you have a lot of experience, Sarah, in sports and working with female athletes and using mindfulness and emotional intelligence. And just recently, you wrote a book on it, which I have with me. It's called Sweat.
Yay.
And I'm so excited. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk a bit about, uh, where you're coming from, how it started for you, and then what, the why. Why do you do what you do today? Why EI focus? Why writing this book? What's all behind all this? So let's start with, who you are. Who are you?
Well, thank you, Tony, for the nice introduction. And yes, I'm Sarah, and I am an emotional intelligence executive coach and the founder of EI Focus. And yes, and I'm the author of Sweat. And I wrote this book as a training tool for the nonprofit organization EI Focus, where we train coaches and athletes on the emotional intelligence leadership skills to help them manage emotions, to create connections between athletes and coaches, and ultimately I believe when we can put these skills into action, I mean, the bottom line is sports become really fun. They become, a place that everyone wants to be, and we want to keep girls playing.
Hmm.
Girls drop out of sports at a rate that's two to
Hmm.
three times that of boys, and
Uh,
part of the reason they come to sports is for their relationships. And so, how can you keep those strong and
uh,
stay motivated? And I believe it's through emotional intelligence.
so tell us a little bit about your story. Like, what's your why? How did it start?
I've been an athlete, my whole life. I've played many different sports. Soccer was my main sport,
Hmm.
and I had amazing coaches, and I played into my college years. And it was then in college that I, for the first time, had a coach that I didn't quite connect with.
Mm.
And I didn't know how to share how I was feeling, being a collegiate athlete with the pressure um, of all of it. I didn't know how to speak up and share how I
Mhm.
was feeling. And I definitely know my coach didn't have those skills either.
Mhm.
So I felt like, okay, my only choices here are to either keep playing or to quit. And even using that word quit, like right now, is really
Mhm.
hard because I'll never forget, turning in my jersey and what that felt like and how it still feels. As athletes, like, we don't quit, and I quit. And
Mhm.
I quit because I didn't feel like I was seen or heard, and I
Mhm.
didn't know how to share. And so, had I had the tools and had my coach had the tools, things could have gone
Mhm.
in a much different direction. And so I work, the work I do with athletes now and coaches, the same story pops up over and over
Mhm.
again of, being stressed, not being able to share how, what's going on for you as an athlete. Um, and for a coach too, like, not really knowing what to do when you see, maybe an athlete mood shift, and how do you
Mhm.
approach that person? How do you speak to it? And so that's what motivated me. I want
Mhm.
to give people the tool. And this is a training tool. This is a meant to be put into action. Little tips on how can you have those conversations, and how can you even begin to identify how you're feeling. Uh,
Mhm.
and how do you talk about it? So
So my question is, where did it come from? So you're in sports, you're doing something, it could be a high school, college, a club, or whatever. And is it the competition? Is it where did those emotions? Where did they come from?
I think it's all of it. It's, as when you're part of a team, there's just this amazing connection, and
Hmm.
and and when it's going really well, like that's the ultimate, is like this feeling that it's like it's another family really, and you've got support, you feel like you can share, it's like it's another family. And so it comes from competition, it comes from the day to day. I mean, when you're a hyper level athlete, it's your life, it's
Mm,
you eat, sleep, sport,
mhm,
school, and of course those relationships really matter. And so um and it's really hard to check the rest of your life at the door, like for instance at practice
mm,
or in a competition, the pressure to gotta win, or I gotta really perform right now, there's the college coaches are watching, or if I don't make this team, what might happen. And you start taking your mind out of being present. So these themes of
mm.
life show up on the
Mhm.
playing field for sure.
Do you think we can draw a parallel between what you experience and what people may be experiencing at their job? Because the reality is like today we work so hard. I hear a lot of people spend like, 50, 60 hours in the office, sometimes more. And that's their life. That's where they're. I've talked to some people and say, my friends, well, I don't have a lot of friends outside of work. Everything is at work, so it's kind of the same idea, like, you put all your eggs in the same basket, and if something goes wrong, it can be very hard. It can be very difficult.
Yes, definitely. I mean, in the work I do with organizations, there's definitely that crossover, the
Mhm,
life of an athlete, and the life in an organization. It's very similar. And how do you stay present with what you
mhm,
need to do at work when you've got family pressure? You want to be home. You want that work-life balance. It's not so easy sometimes.
mhm,
And uh, the the same kind of thing. It's like our all parts of our lives, we are the common denominator in all
mm.
parts of our lives. And so we need to attend to ourselves, so that we can show up to be our best, whether it's on the playing field or at work.
Just want to say hi to Bruno, Svetlana, Rochelle, and
Hey.
Nick is there too. Hello. And
Hi.
keep it coming. If you have any comments, any questions, feel free to put it out there, and we do our best to address it. And Svetlana is asking if it's your first book. Is it your first book?
Yes, it's my first book. Yes, and it was, wow, what a project. And yes.
And besides the book, also you're doing. I've seen some podcast on Spotify with female athletes. So talking to these female athletes who are pretty high level, I understand what and emotional intelligence for them. What did you learn? What did you figure out?
Yes. Well, I and what an honor to get that opportunity to speak to, all these amazing coaches and athletes. And what I love is, just simply learning about how the the intention for that podcast was to kind of reveal, what does emotional intelligence look like in action.
Hmm.
And the women, and we've got a couple interview of men. We call it our first
Hmm.
dude, is coming soon. um, but what does it look like in action? And these interviews reveal, what does it look like, to be uh, triggered by a referee, for instance.
Hmm.
How do you keep your cool? And so that's, the intention is, and there's so many examples there of
Hmm.
how do these high level coaches and athletes and
Hmm.
leaders put emotional intelligence into action,
Hmm.
managing themselves, using,
Hmm.
their own mindfulness exercises to
Hmm.
advantage, so that they can be effective and stay present.
This morning, I started to listen to one of your podcasts with Michelle Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah, kung fu, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Competition? Yeah, yeah, and, it was amazing, just a few things that I heard, I was like, "Wow, this is very interesting," like, she mentioned at some point that, there's a lot of pains, that you get, like in sports, physically hurt, not just emotionally. But she said it's necessary because you can learn from it, you can grow from it. So
Yeah.
instead of, like, complaining about it, just accepting it and being able to use it to grow. And she said also things about, like, being triggered. So someone does something that's unfair, that's unjust, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
And what she said, like, yeah, you cannot do anything about it, and you will feel bad, you will have those emotions like, this is unfair, I shouldn't be treated like this, but you need to get over it, you need to
Yeah.
get over it.
Well, and many athletes get motivated by it, actually.
Hmm.
It's,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm fired up now," it gives them
Hmm.
energy,
Hmm.
and so,
Hmm.
reframing in the moment, because if you get stuck there, if you have a bad call, or, you know, I work with water polo players, and there's a lot going on under the water that you don't see, uh,
Hmm.
but getting kicked or whatever,
Hmm.
lots of good stuff underwater, but it can be, how can you reframe in that moment? Because if you get angry and you get focused on that
Hmm.
whatever mistake or that aggression, you're sitting there while the game's going on, and so how can you reframe quickly? Like, okay, this is, quickly part of the game. I need to move my body in a different way. I need to get it, in my position, whatever it might be, but to reframe what might hold you back into something that
Hmm.
motivates you to even work harder. One of the most, she's a former Olympian, and she says just that. She's like, and she's a water polo player, and she's
Hmm.
like, oh, bring it on. When they kick me hard, she's like, oh, that makes me go harder. And so, while the pain might hurt physically, she
Hmm.
reframes it in her mind of,
Hmm.
all right, then, I'm gonna go harder now.
So that's a learning experience. That's resilience, and I think I heard that something else that to me is the best description of emotional intelligence I've heard, is that instead of letting emotions control you and take you down, you use them to achieve your goals.
Yeah.
You can use that energy. So you get kicked, someone does something that's not fair or whatever.
Mhm.
Use that to go
Yes.
even harder and try to achieve what you want to achieve. It makes a lot of sense when you're in competition, but at the end of the day, even when we go to the office, there is a little bit of competition, right? We compete with our competitors. We want to be better than the next, company, and we have goals we want to achieve. So using those little things that are happening to figure out, how you can bring the best of yourself out there.
Right.
I think that's the kernel of it, right?
Yeah. And, the adaptability, a little bit
Hmm.
of how do you manage when things aren't going your way
Hmm.
exactly? And I do believe this is a skill. This is something that's why these athletes are, at the level that they are, because they've developed the skill to not get weighed down by the what might be perceived as, a negative. So they're able to quickly flip into, what do I got to do? And for some of them, so there's a real exercises that they do. One of my athletes that I interviewed, um, she talked about when she makes a mistake, and this is an Olympian who's just in our
Hmm.
recent Olympic Games, another water polo player. But she goes underwater for a moment, regroups, like lets all the noise out. Like, okay,
Hmm.
I missed the shot. I'm going to go underwater for a second, regroup, and I'm back. For others, it's like I take a breath when someone kicks me hard. Okay, I need to take a breath, and I'm moving on. Bad call, pause, what just happened? Okay, that just happened. I better keep focusing on my team, or else they're not going to have a coach if I get derailed by that.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it is
Hmm.
a practice, and it's same thing at work. When
Hmm.
things aren't going your way, or in life, really.
Hmm.
Notice that, okay, what just happened? This
Hmm.
didn't feel right. What about it doesn't feel
Hmm.
right to me? And how do I want to move forward? It's your opportunity to decide, am I going to get stuck here, or what am I going
Yeah.
to get forward? Yeah.
And in sports, everything goes so fast. I mean, sometimes, I watch a lot of soccer games myself,
Yeah,
and I can see sometimes people don't have the mental that they need to have, and they get into that space where things are just not working. It's not clicking,
yeah,
and they know their stuff. So it's all mental. It's like they may be afraid, they may be a little bit frozen because of what's happening. But also, what I've seen is like sometimes things can degenerate a little bit. Someone kicks someone, or someone puts someone on the floor, and then there's a reaction,
yeah,
and we've seen like awful stuff in those games sometimes. But what you're describing here is someone realizing, okay, something happened to me. I'm not going to react. I'm going to create a safe space where I'm going to be able to pause and realize what's going on, absorb it, and then I'm not going to react. I'm going to respond to it. And I think that's the big difference.
yes. And it takes practice, that it
Hmm.
doesn't just happen overnight.
Hmm.
The way to, when you have to want to change, and usually you've learned a lesson on what didn't go well. For
Hmm.
instance, in the athletic world, when this one particular coach that I'm thinking about getting, a bad call from a referee, and all of a sudden her full attention goes somewhere else.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then what happens next is her team doesn't have a coach present. And then what happens
Hmm.
next is
Hmm.
goals are shot against them, and then they
Hmm.
ultimately lose. So,
Hmm.
okay, I
Hmm.
don't want that to happen again. So how can we learn from our, call it, mistakes, or when things don't go the way we want them to, and uh, realize, like, we can make it, we can change, we can do something different, we can make we can we have influence over
Hmm.
what happens in our lives, and in this case,
Yeah, yeah. And
moving forward.
similarly, like in the people working in an office, they have projects, hard projects they need to put together. This time to market is very important,
Yep,
meeting the deadlines and the budget and so on. But you plan, you plan, you plan, and then you go out there, and then you meet reality, and everything falls apart. And
that's
then you need to reinvent, to refigure how to do it. And like you said, you could spend a lot of time complaining and blaming the universe, others, whatever, or you can keep your head together and actually use that to
yeah,
to fuel you to do even better, to go the extra mile, to get back to where you want to be.
yeah. Yeah, and one of the things in the book that I talk about, I call them EI boosters. You know,
Yeah,
these EI boosters.
I was going to ask you about this, about the eye boosters. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that these EI boosters are practices, because to be able to do that, to be able to have the energy to even want to be better, because if we're exhausted and we're totally depleted, things don't go our way. I mean, I know that when I don't feel energized and I'm exhausted, I'm like, I just want to give up, right? I'm like, I'm tired. I don't know what else to do here. My brain actually doesn't even work so well when I'm
Hmm.
feeling that way. So it's very hard to even come up with, okay, how might I motivate myself to do something else? At that point, I'm just like, okay, fine. I'll try again next time,
Hmm.
potentially. But what can we do in our lives to keep us kind of primed and ready for those moments, so that we stay in the
Hmm.
game, really? And
That's very interesting to me, Sarah, because I'm thinking, like, when we look at top athletes, like at the Olympics or top sports, they really take care of themselves. They really take care of their body and make sure that they are in top shape to do what they want to do.
right.
And what we don't realize is, like, when you're a top performer at the workplace, it's kind of the
Mhm.
same thing. You cannot really perform to the best of your abilities unless you take care of your body.
Yeah.
So what are the AI boosters? What is it that people are doing that make a difference?
Yeah, and it's part of the training program, right? You're
Mhm.
training in your sport just like you've got a specific job at work, but in order to be the best in your sport, there's things that surround this.
Mhm.
And they're what I call the EI boosters. And so I call so there's sleep, getting
Mm.
enough sleep
Mhm.
so that we feel energized, so that we can our brains are working at their best possible. I know for myself, it's a conscious effort, and it's really I'm very intentional about setting myself up, uh,
Mhm.
and it's kind of like it's not just something that happens like, "Oh, boy, it's time for bed. What time is it? Oh, I better go to bed." It's like, "Oh, no, this is structured because I know that I need to get the 8 hours." And so how can you do that? And it's the same, for athletes, it's the same for leaders and organizations. Like, getting enough sleep is key to being able to be adaptable in the moment, to be able
Mhm.
to have that energy to make decisions. Um, and so sleep is one of them.
Mhm.
Focus is another, that ability to stay present. So whether that I call it focus training, some might call
Mhm.
it meditation, mindfulness.
Mhm. Mhm.
So how can you bring some of this focus training into your life to so that you can stay present, stay um, with what's happening
Mm.
versus getting, for instance, in this example of a mistake, it's easy to get stuck there. Okay, how if you're stuck there, you're missing out what's happening
Mhm.
right now. The ball's
Mhm.
moving. And so how do you stay present? How do you notice it? Stay present and not worry about, the win or the loss. You gotta focus on the game right now. And then the third and movement,
Mhm.
athletes and coaches especially come to be coaches because they love the sport, but sometimes stop moving themselves. And actually it's also a lot about leading by example. You expect
Mhm.
the people you lead to take care of themselves, to be fit, to stay strong.
Mhm.
How are you showing up as leader? So modeling leadership, taking care of your body, and not only just that, but we know a lot of the health benefits of movement, but also there's a lot that has to do with creativity, moving our bodies and our brains are very connected, and getting out in nature and moving, it helps us
Mm.
come up with new ideas. And so how might we manage a situation at work? How might we do something different? um,
What do you do for yourself for movements?
oh gosh, I'm love to mountain bike. That's
Uh-huh.
my thing, but I definitely get out every day.
Uh-huh.
And I'm really trying to build in, walking meetings. Uh,
Mhm.
a lot of us are working at home. I've worked at home for a long time
Mhm.
now, but getting outside and moving, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be like going on a big hike, big run, big bike ride. It can just simply be walking around the block, walking down the
Mhm.
street, just
Mhm.
moving. So that's another EI booster. And gratitude. Gratitude is
Mhm.
a biggie. And the benefits of gratitude, of connectedness and less stress, and just building this into everyday life, and how it can motivate your team, uh,
Mhm.
my athletic teams, and actually the organizations that I work with. Practicing building gratitude as part of what they do as a team just really connects everybody. It energizes.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
it changes the energy where positive energy is stronger than negative energy, right?
yeah,
And
definitely.
and everything is contagious. So if you're not happy to be there, then your energy is kind of locked in and you cannot express it.
Mhm.
If you feel like you're lucky to be there, you are grateful for being there. It's a privilege to be there. Then that unlocks the energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you're a leader, to be able to, recognize what you're grateful for in those around you, a little bit goes a long way.
Hmm.
And in the sports world, for instance, and in organizations, for a leader to acknowledge something that an athlete or an employee has done, big or small, can
Hmm.
can just change everything. It can mean so much, and it goes a long way. So a little bit goes a long, long way.
So recognition, appreciation, giving feedback.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. It's interesting. Yesterday, I was listening to Dr. Liza Filman Barrett,
Mhm.
and who her book was How Emotions Are Made, I think. And I was listening to that, and she said that a lot of um, a lot of people, when we talk about emotion, developing your emotional intelligence, being able to deal with emotions, she said a lot of people go to self-help books that talk about what you should tell yourself, and everything is kind of mental. But she
Mhm.
said the most important thing is to take care of your body.
Yeah.
If you get enough sleep, if you exercise, if you eat well, that will do a lot more uh, to enhance your capacity to handle your emotions than all the self-talk you can do. And
Yes.
yeah, and that was amazing for me to hear that from someone who does neuroscience. I mean,
Mhm.
this is like, wow, okay.
Definitely. I and
Hmm.
that's, I know that. I know that for
Hmm.
my own body, and that's, the EI boosters, that's really,
Hmm.
and it's one thing to read about all this too. It's so this book, it's structured as a playbook, so it's
Hmm.
meant to be used. It's not it Yes, there's information in there for the mind to think about,
Hmm.
but there's practices in there. Go practice it. You've got to put these things into play, because you can't, with emotional intelligence, you can't just read about it and say, "Okay,
Hmm.
done." You got to
Hmm.
go out there and practice it. And the thing is that it's kind of lifelong practice too. And
Hmm.
it never ends, because we're forever changing and our
Hmm.
environments are forever changing. And so we have a lot of opportunities actually to practice
Hmm.
all the different, situations we find ourselves in.
It's so refreshing to have a tool like this. I mean, uh, yeah, like you said, you open the book and you see, like, you can take notes, you can reflect on what you've done, and it's very, very practical. I love it for this. And this is something, definitely, if anybody has uh, daughters who are like practicing sports and out there, they should have this book. I mean, it's ideal,
And
and
I
their
actually,
coaches as well.
yeah, and it's what I love about it too. Yes, it was written for coaches of female athletes, but these are leadership skills that
Hmm.
apply to everyone, and that's actually
Hmm.
a lot of the feedback I've gotten is even from non-athletes, non-coaches, that these elements, we're leaders in our lives in some capacity, and these emotional intelligence skills help us, whether it's at work or at home and on the playing field.
Mhm. That's very interesting because there's a whole lot of people out there I've talked to who've been telling me, yeah, all the mindfulness stuff, I'm not interested. I'm an outdoor person. I want, I do things with my hands. I want to be outside. I want to be exercising. Tell me about climbing a mountain, not sitting down, and doing nothing. And I think, this is the kind of like what you're offering speaks more to that type of people, the active person who like to be, using their body.
Yeah.
That will talk more to them than all the other books I have seen on the topic. Is it available on Amazon?
Yes, it's available
Okay,
on
cool.
Amazon, and I do love that. I really think it's important to be able to incorporate mind call it, the focus training, really, in our everyday lives, whether you're
Mhm.
just walking down the hall in your home or you're out on a walk, you're running, whatever.
Mhm.
I really like people to be able to incorporate this work into what it is they're already doing, so that they don't feel like, it's just another thing, because people are really busy right now and already overwhelmed. And so
Mhm.
these exercises are meant to be, you know, brought into your life,
Mhm.
your current life. Yeah.
Today is the last day of Women History Month,
Mm.
and so really so special, to have you here for that last day of the Women's History Month. And do you have any story you want to share? Something really special to you? Your
Well,
experience with athletes or teams?
um, I guess, I mean, I've worked with amazing people, and my own daughters they're amazing athletes themselves, and I'm so proud of them. I have to say, my mother, I started playing sports at the very beginning in the gosh, it was in the 70s. Yes, I've got a few years on me, but I was on a few of the very first women's teams, and I have to I guess I want to acknowledge my mother, who's not well now, but for her inspiration and her support of what I was doing, because it wasn't what all the other girls were doing. And my mom was an athlete herself, big tennis player, skier, and just really, with that support. And I think we can do that for other girls too. Is how do we support them and so that they can get the
Hmm.
benefits that I have in life.
Mm, Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. Thanks
Mhm.
for having me.
So we're coming to the end. Svetlana is asking, like, what can I do to promote you and your book? And so, what's the best way to do that?
Ah, well, thank you so much. Well, I'd love for you to read it. And if people like it, I'd love reviews on Amazon. That would be huge. And, and when you come across, we at EI Focus are doing training for organizations on these leadership skills. So spreading the word to whether it's the soccer organization, any sports, we are not sport specific. We speak to all sports. So we at EI Focus do trainings and would love what you can do is help spread the word. And you can find me at Sarah at eifocus.org. SARAH, that is.
And I want to add to that that we all have, like, daughters, nieces, or neighbors' daughters that we know that are practicing sports, at a certain level. And I think it's a great gift. I mean, this is a perfect book for them to realize, like, how far they can go if they can control their emotions and use that energy to achieve what they want to do. Also perfect for the coaches as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, really
Thank you.
cool. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, everyone, for being there with us and participating in the comments and so on. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
I'm having a little problem ending the broadcast. So the video is going to be a little longer than it should be. Hmm. So I'm going to remove us from the stream, and hopefully that will stop the video, but it doesn't stop on its own right now. Little technical problem.
All righty. Well, I can just leave the studio then. And thank you, Tony.
Bye, Sarah.